Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. Is the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I am delighted to welcome Joshilyn Jackson to the podcast this week. New York Times and USA Today best-selling author Joshilyn Jackson writes page-turning suspense novels that revolve around timely women's issues, raising questions about justice, motherhood, career, class, and the thorny mechanics of redemption. She previously penned 8 works of Southern fiction, all of which have a murder mystery or thriller lurking inside the family drama. Her critically acclaimed work has been translated into more than a dozen languages, and Jackson is also an award-winning audiobook narrator. She lives in a 150-year-old Victorian Rowhouse in Albany, New York, with her family. Joshilyn, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Julie.
I am really delighted to be having this conversation with you, and we have lots of things to talk about, but let's start where I always start. When did you say to yourself, I want to be a writer?
I do not remember that. I was saying that out loud before I had concrete memory. So I was told that as an irritatingly precocious child, I announced at a church social, somebody asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I said, I'm going to write the great American novel. I think I was 4. And honestly, that right there, that's a kid who's not being spanked enough. Instead, my parents were incredibly supportive, and look what happened. I'm not saying I wrote the great American novel, but I have been able to have a job doing the thing I love the most in the world. So,
yeah. So, then how did you build the craft? When did you start saying, all right, let me figure this out. Let me start building craft?
So my mother published my first novel when I was 4 or 5 years old using the Crayola stapler method. I started writing novels. I was such a huge reader. I learned to read. I had an older brother, and I learned to read before I had concrete memory. I was phonetically reading about the time I was 3. I was obsessed with books. When I got the first time I wrote a novel that didn't have pictures and wasn't on printer paper, I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and this is going to date me, but Walden Books was a thing. Yeah. And blank books came out. We had never seen a blank book before, not a journal or a diary, but it had a real cover with a picture on it and blank pages. And so I would buy them and write knockoff Stephen King novels into them. And the novel would be exactly as long as the number of pages I had. So the writing would start out big, and as I started to run out of pages and had to get to the end, it got really small. I wrote one called Don't Go Into the Woods, in which a lot of middle school girls who looked like the ones who were being mean to me went into the woods, and nothing good came of it. And so I wrote the class play in high school. I was always doing creative writing in high school. In college, I had really gotten serious about playwriting. So I was a theater major at first, and then eventually I did a master's degree. And by then, I'd sort of moved from playwriting to trying to write novels when I went to graduate school.
And so did you get a master's in creative writing? Or
Yeah, it was a master's in English literature with a specialization in creative writing and medieval religious theater, because that's so close, same thing, really.
Well, as somebody who spent many years working on the admin side of theater, I understand these journeys. But also playwriting it helps with structure a lot. I mean, it's a completely different art form, but you get 3 acts, you got to leave people.
For sure, yeah. I'm not great at it. I moved to novel writing because, I mean, my plays were funny. I had a couple of plays produced on a small scale, but in like Chicago and Atlanta at actual theaters that people pay to come and see them. But they were really funny, but I don't think there was a there there. They weren't that great. Or maybe, I mean, you know, I say that, but I was young. Maybe I could have been a better playwright, but novels, like playwriting to me comes from like the front of the brain. It's very thinky. It feels like a battle because I'm like trying to control it when that's not what you do in playwriting. It's collaborative. You have to leave room for a director. You have to like have this spine that is your theme or what you're talking about, but there's all this room for directors to interpret and all this room for then actors to come in and interpret. And I was trying to lock stuff down and I'm like, you know, that's an actor, not a playwright. And I very much, to me, acting comes from the back part of my brain, like the occipital lobe. It's way back there, reptile brain stuff. And novel writing feels like that to me. It doesn't feel like playwriting. It's much more, it's character driven. It's instinctive. It's weird. Like to me, novel writing feels more like acting than playwriting.
Interesting. I did a webinar once with an actor and a director because there's so many skills that theater people learn or know for character building, for example. You know how a character drinks their tea, even if they never drink tea on stage, because you just know you learn that much about the character. And the same thing for a writer. You need to really understand a character, even though you're not going to dump all that information in the book. So your acting training probably also helped with the storytelling and the richness of all of this.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I think that is why I write. Like I'm one of those late diagnosed autistic women who had no idea that I was autistic until I had children who were diagnosed autistic as children, because it was at that point they could recognize, well, my son was diagnosed as a child and my daughter was diagnosed as a young adult. And, you know, I remember my son went to an amazing school that helps young people on the autism spectrum learn to, you know, live independently, which he does. He's just the most remarkable young man. And I remember like my daughter came to me and she told me she was autistic. And I said, well, that's just silly. No, you're not. She said, no, Mom, I think I am. And I said, well, why do you think that? And she started listing all these reasons why she thought she was autistic. And to every single one of them, I was like, honey, that is normal. I did that. No, honey, I still do that. That is 100% normal. Okay. None of it was 100% normal. It was all an absolute textbook list of the traits of women on the autism spectrum. So I went to these teachers who worked at this school for autistic young people and said, do you think? And they were like, oh, we're so glad you brought it up because we're not allowed to, but here's what you need to do. And it was life-changing for me to understand these things about myself. I had a very hard time, like academically in college. I mean, eventually I did all right, but I did like fail out of 2 or 3 colleges because I couldn't do executive function and it was, and I really think like the reason I write novels is to understand people. Like it's the reason it feels like acting and the reason acting is more comfortable to me than playwriting is because I think all of this came out of masking. Like this is how I learned to write. And a really interesting thing I learned is a huge percentage of women on the spectrum end up either actors or writers because these are the art forms that teach you empathy, that teach you to understand what people say and what they do and why they say and do it. And that was my special interest because as a young woman growing up in the South, there's so much pressure to be the social glue, to be gracious, to read the situation and de-escalate things and smooth things along. And like theater and novel writing taught me how to reliably present as like a normal human. So I think that's why I have my job.
Well, Thank you for sharing that, and for giving. I'm sure more than a couple of listeners will have an aha moment when they're hearing that, because they can recognize things in themselves, which again weren't talked about or diagnosed when many of us were younger. So that
Yeah, I mean, I'm Gen X.
yeah,
When I was coming up, autistic people were Rain Man. They were institutionalized, and it was because their moms weren't nice.
yeah, 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 and it's there's a lot. There's a spectrum of what normal, quote unquote, is anyway, and I think that they're gifts to sort of looking at the world in a different way as well. And obviously, the way you look at the world contributed to your amazing talent as a storyteller.
Well, that's very kind of you. I mean, I do think like just the way like a lot of creatives are neurodivergent, so it's just not very surprising. Like it's just not very surprising. There's all this sort of backlash on like the TikTok, as the old people say about TikTok. Like every creator I know is coming out as autistic. Well, honey, yes, it doesn't mean everybody's autistic, but a lot of people who are doing these weird creative things are neurodivergent. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah. I have a niece who is dyslexic and has executive function disorder as well. But when I would be her special visitor in school, and they talked about the gift of dyslexia. That it's not, that she looks at the world in a different way, and how great is that? And that's a gift. And
Yeah,
so it's sort of that's, I think, a much healthier way to look at things as well, as the gifts of
hmm,
being neurodivergent as well. Yeah.
yeah,
So you're, and I love your brain. People are going to miss the references, the front and the back, but it's very visceral when you're referencing the back of your brain. So as you're figuring out the storytelling and the novel writing and the depth of what you can then do so that you can get the visceral feeling into the work. And Stephen King was obviously an early influencer and a fabulous way to deal with the mean girls in middle school. Um, do you talk to me about that building craft? Did you take, you've got a master's by classes, like, this isn't, we learn and we figure out, and we don't, we write terrible books and then write better books because we've learned more. And, tell me about
yeah.
your evolution. And you just because, I love complex sentences. You also mentioned that you wrote Southern literature, but they always had an element of mystery or suspense to it. So just as this, a lot of stuff.
I mean, I think that the thing that the thing that shaped me the most as a writer, hands down, was the way I read. Writers read,
Hmm.
and I read extremely eclectically. I had a brother who was 5 years older than me, or 4.5 years older than me, and like so when I was 9, 8 through 12, I was reading like the things you would expect: A Little Princess, The Secret Garden. Um, I was also reading, like I was stealing books from my mother. I read at 9, I read Roots, I read Jaws, I read Tender as the Night. I read all the James Bond books. And my brother was giving me like his Conan the Barbarian books with these, muscle men and ladies in chainmail bikinis on the cover. And my mom would look at those cover pictures and be like, should Joshilyn be reading that? And my brother would be like, yes, Conan is great. She should absolutely be reading. Okay, I should not have been reading that. But reading just across all those genres and made me kind of a weirdly eclectic writer. So I am writing, I'm writing out of my own experience. Even when I moved over to domestic suspense and what I call like a domestic thriller, which to me that means like it's usually not a cop or a detective. It's like a normal human in a neighborhood getting caught up in something ugly, or secrets are bigger than they are, something disturbing. Um, like I had a foundation of reading like a lot of stuff, everything from just like really good literature all the way to just like the most commercial plot moving along, super fun delicious books. And so like when I started writing, it was just a thing that like under the structure was something I had internalized. Like the first time I wrote a novel, it was 85,000 words. I never word counted. I
Wow.
just, because I had read so many books, I could feel where things were supposed to happen. Like, and it was interesting. Like once I had gone to school and understood dramatic arc and structure, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing. But not because I had parsed it out, because I just could feel it. And I think that's true for a lot of writers. Like there's always the thing that comes easily.
Yeah.
For me, plot is easy, structure is easy, character is easy. It's really hard for me, sense of place. Like that's a thing I had to learn manually. I
Mhm.
had to, because I guess in most of my reading, like those were the parts I didn't pay very much attention to, like less attention to sense of place. Poor Eudora Welty's turning over in her grave. But so like things like sense of place that I had to, things like how to make place a character, how to make place relevant, how to set a scene in a broad stroke and then a couple of just incisive details that put the reader someplace. I didn't know how to do any of that. Like the first novel I drafted, my friend read it and she was like, I don't know what room, or I don't know if we're inside or outside. I never know where we are. And I love the dialogue. We could be anywhere. I don't know where we are at any point in this whole book. So I think that's true. Like we have stuff that, I mean, you can always get better. I believe Stephen King, my fella, when he says, you know, you have to. It's a gift. Like you have to. The gods have to touch your brain in that space, and then if they do, then you can write a book. But if you want to write a good book, you have to work, you have to learn, you have to practice, you have to try, you have to really mess up, you have to let people read you and tell you when you're doing a really bad job.
Yeah. And take the feedback from your friend of, I love the dialogue, I have no idea where this is. And instead
Yeah.
of getting defensive, you say, okay, let me figure out how to fix that.
I also think it's perfectly fine to get defensive and yell and be mad about it, but you just can't stay defensive or stay mad. Like when somebody tells you you're doing something wrong and there's something in your book that's dumb and not working, that never feels good. And I hate this. I hate that people are always telling you like, oh, you have to be professional and not feel that. That's crap. Just feel it. You can, I mean, you don't show it. Don't show it, but you get to feel it and you get to stomp around with your husband or your dog or your best friend later and be like, what a butthole and what a stupid butthole. They are wrong about everything. Cool down 2 days later, you're like, oh crap, they're right. Like you get to have those feelings, and it's not unprofessional to be human, love your work, be blind to its faults. You have to love it. You have to love it enough that you would bite someone's throat over it. So why? I mean, if you pretend that and stuff that down and put it in a box and sit on it, you're going to like explode one day. Like just feel it. It's fine. Be mad. Just don't show it. That you be professional. You say, that's interesting. I'll think about that. And then go home and call them the worst names you know. And then read back over their notes 2 days later and send them cookies for being so great to you.
I love that. I love that advice. And I love that arc. And I think that you're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. um, uh, so talk to me about, process for you. I talk about the gravitational pull of an idea, where something comes to you and then maybe you read, and then all of a sudden you start to build up this force that's like, okay, this is enough for a book. Do you write your way in? Do you start with that? Or how do you start a project?
Starts with the character.
Mm-hmm.
It always starts with the character. I usually think about characters for a long time, sometimes years before I write about them. I'm always making up characters. I'm always pretending to be people and practicing mannerisms and talking to myself, talking to the dogs, talking to the cat. And these people that I make up, I'll think about like where they live, what their family situation is, what they love, what they hate, what they die for, what they kill for, how they talk. It's just something about them that makes them interesting to me. And then they'll either go away or they'll stick. And if they stick and they keep coming back and I keep thinking about them, other characters I've invented will begin to, I'll be like, oh, that's her sister. And that's her ex-husband. That's a mess. And a cast will start to build. And sometimes the character I started with that I was so interested in ends up being like a very small character. And I'll realize this newer character who's their daughter or whatever is the main character. And that goes on for a long while. And then when that little group of characters kind of feels gelled and really loud in my head, and I'm thinking of them all the time, I take the one that I like the most and who I want to inhabit for the book, most of the book. And I set whatever they love on fire, and then I just see what they do. And so I go down a lot of like wrong alleys sometimes starting out, and but it's fun. It's not a very efficient way to write a book. I'll tell you that. There's better ways. I can't do any of them, but I mean, it's true. Like people are always like, oh, should I read a book that tells me how to write a novel? And I always say, no, that's the dumbest thing you can do. If you read a book about how to write a novel, you will learn how that person writes a novel. You need to read 30 books about how to write a novel. And then you need to try all the things. And then you need to piece together the way you write a novel. That's much better than trying to like just take over someone else's process, I think. Try them on like shoes and see what works for you.
And you know what? It may change as through shoes over time. It may be that you're going to find another way in or another book, but I think that's also great advice. So I'm fascinated with these characters showing up and being part of your. It sounds like you have a cast of characters who are rattling around with you for a while, and then there'll be a group who comes together and says, "Okay."
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do for yourself as a writer is create time in which you are bored. Don't doom scroll. Don't always, don't pick up that book, turn the TV off, do something boring. Because when you drive for 8 hours, or I have a friend who knits, like when your body is busy doing a task, your brain starts to look around for narrative and for something to entertain itself with. And if you make that space to be bored, a plot is going to come, or for me, it's a character is going to come, an image is going to come. I mean, sometimes it's not like these characters just come out of space. Like I'll see something in the world that'll stick with me, or I love to eavesdrop. I love to eavesdrop. So I like to like sit in coffee houses and eavesdrop, or just I love like layovers in airports because I just like pretend I'm looking at my computer or whatever, and I just listen to people going past. And you get these little one lines, or you see somebody carrying something unusual, and you get that question in your head. Why did she say that to him? And your brain starts to build the narrative. And who is she, this person I just saw go by? And it has nothing to do with that person, but it's just you see, especially in airports when people are exhausted and upset, you see a lot of really human moments. You see a lot of weird vulnerabilities that people, aren't going to show you at the neighborhood barbecue. They're in the airport, they're exhausted, they're, so in some ways you're at your worst, that's when people are the most interesting, I think.
Well, and you also talked about find out what they care about, burn it down and see what happens. And that's part of it is, that inciting incident, but also like, how bad can I make it for these characters to see what this book's going to be about?
If you're like, and it's so funny. I have a friend another writer that I've been friends with since we were both in graduate school. And we look at each other's very early drafts, like stuff I'm not going to show anybody else. And I see hers as well. And there's this thing that we both do, and I think it's a very normal writerly thing to do, is we work so hard to create little spaces of safety for our characters and to make sure they're okay. No! And you like to get the book to be good, you have to rip all of those away. And that's hard because you love them and you want to protect them. But if you protect them, your book's not as good.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned that you start writing and sometimes will dead end or have to reverse and figure. So do you at all say this is what I'm writing towards, or is every day an exploration of the journey?
It depends on the book. I mean, there's always like what I think of as like treat scenes. There are things I know are going to happen in a book, and sometimes they're not the things you might imagine. Like I love a big set piece scene. I love a big murder confrontation or a chase through a old abandoned theme park, or I love that stuff. But I'm writing toward these really small human moments where I understand who that person is, and sometimes I'll think of that. That's the thing that started the book, and I'll write toward that, like not in terms of plot, but in terms of where they are. Like I kind of feel like like I'm an optimist. I end in I don't believe in like a shiny thing where everything's tidy and fine. I don't really like that kind of ending. But I do want to end in what I call the breath.
Mhm.
Like when things are really tense, especially when I'm writing suspense, and it's getting worse and worse, and this is piling, and the danger's rising, and you don't know who did this, and there's this moment where like the storm has passed, and there's probably storms on the horizon that we've all seen in the book. Life is not perfect, but you get to go. And you're like, that exhale is there for you. That's where I want to end the book. So I'm oftentimes writing toward that breath, like,
Yeah.
and knowing that I'm going to let some of these characters, not all of them, I have a high body count, but not all of them, but some of these characters are going to reach that breath.
Mhm.
It makes me able to push them harder
Mhm.
because so, because I don't like a depressing ending. And I'm also like, even when I was writing Southern fiction, I'm not a super literary writer. I was writing like the kind of books that like your Sunday book club reads. Like I'm not like, sometimes literary writers will be like, oh, I always have a hopeful ending. And then their ending is like, Svetlinka stood on the heaped bones of her children, and when she looked down, she saw a tiny dandelion blooming in the eye socket of Johann's skull. Okay, no, I don't mean that. I mean, I like to end in a place where there's actually some hope and resolution and relationships moving forward, and not tidy, not perfect, but you don't want to lie down on the ground face down and just cry. You want to. That's not what I want to write.
I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but when you went to grad school,
Yes.
there's pressure, not as much now, but there's pressure in grad school for writers to be literary writers.
Yeah, but I mean, at that time, I don't know that I would. I was not writing nearly as commercially as I do now. I was in magazine. I was writing literary fiction then. I was in Triquarterly. I was in Calyx. I mean, I was in some pretty
Mm-hmm.
well-known literary magazines, and I got into a couple of anthologies. In fact, one of my short stories, I wear this as a badge of pride. One of my short stories, which was anthologized, was taken before Congress. A congressional committee read one of my short stories to see if it was pornography, because they were trying to like dismantle part of the NEA, and it was a literary anthology that had been published partially on an NEA grant, and my book had some let's just say there's some visceral images in that book. It was in that story. It was not pornography at all. I mean, it was visceral, but I mean, that was, it was literary enough to be in a thing with an NEA grant and have Congress read it and be like, wow, this is certainly a graphic depiction of a horrible moment. So yeah, in graduate school, I was writing more in, I was writing, I mean, I was reading more literary stuff, and I think that matters. Like, you write what you read, and you're in graduate school for literature. So I'm reading great literature. I was focusing on medieval literature and modernists. I love the modernists, and there's more crossover there than you think. And so, that was all around me. I mean, but the truth is, my love, when I can choose what to read, I don't read super hardcore literary fiction. I prefer literary light fiction. I want it to engage with theme on a serious level. I want it to be writing about stuff that matters to me, but I also want a big scoop of plot. I want there to be kissing and shooting. So, I naturally sort of changed to be writing what I actually love the most.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And thrillers and suspense, can you talk a little bit about the difference of those and writing them?
Sure. I mean, you mean book club fiction and sort of the suspensey? Yeah, sure. Honestly, there's not that much difference because I did kill a lot of people in my Southern fiction. But it really is about pacing. Like I always say, when I'm writing suspense, it's the book I would write, but with a bigger, faster, louder engine. I think that commercial fiction, plot drives the car, characters in the passenger seat, theme maybe in the back seat, maybe tied up in a sack in the trunk. Literary fiction, theme drives the car, characters in the passenger seat, plot is often in the back seat. I always have character driving my car. When I was writing book club fiction, plot was in the passenger seat, and theme was like kind of leaning over from the back seat. And now with the suspense, I would say theme is sitting in the back seat and plot has kind of moved over to snuggle with character. And the engine's louder and the shape of it is different. Like the up is steeper and the drop is faster and the denouement is shorter. Like just structurally, it's a meaner, more rattly, sleeker roller coaster.
Yeah.
As opposed to like a ride that is more like Space Mountain-y with a lot of it's done with light effects. It's really, you're dropping. So, yeah, I don't know how helpful that is because that's all very instinctive talk, but it's honestly just a feeling. I know that's terrible, but that's true for me. Like the way I changed genres. Do you want to hear this? This is weird.
Yeah, I do want to.
I had written 8 works of Southern fiction, and I wrote a book called The Almost Sisters. And I have a weird family history that's very much rooted in Southern history. And I'd been trying to come to terms with some things in that for a long time. And just like, I'm so ambivalent about my homeland. Like, I love the South. But why wouldn't I? It's beautiful and it is my home. But if you're not ambivalent about that, if you can stand on that soil that is black with so much blood and terror and not feel ambivalent about that, you don't have a heart. So I'm writing about all these things. And I write this book called The Almost Sisters, which is very much based on my grandparents. It's actually about 2 little old ladies who are best friends. And they're one of their granddaughters, and they are one is black and one is white, as were my paternal grandparents. And their friendship has endured for 70 years, or I guess 90 years, because they were cradle friends. The white woman's the black woman's mother was the wet nurse of the white woman who's in her 90s, And and I mean, this in a lot of ways, that's my grandparents' story. And of course, they have a body in the attic. It's like the basic idea of the story is like my grandmother Birchie and her best friend Waddy had been hiding her dementia for years. When I found them out, that I realized their bigger secret was how they were going to get the body in the attic out past me. So it's there's that murder mystery thriller thing I always do. But when I wrote the book and when I finished it, it's not like I thought, well, now I've said what needs to be said about the South, because I'm not that, who can do that? But the thing I was trying to say, I can't say it any better. Did I say it fully? I don't know, probably not. But can I say it any better? No, I said it. That's just, I couldn't say it any better. And so I just started writing another book, and it just felt different. And I was about 6 chapters in, and I kind of took a break from it, came back, read the 6 chapters, called my agent and said, hey, I'm writing a thriller and I'm under contract for 2 Southern novels. So maybe you should look at this. So I gave it to my agent, and she said, are you sure it's a thriller? I'm like, I read a lot. I'm pretty sure. She called me back. She's like, okay, 1, this is a thriller. 2, it's great. We're going right to your editor. And we were in negotiations for the next, they had given us an offer for 2 Joshilyn Jackson books, which that means Southern fiction, probably with a body. And so she read it, and then it came back for 2 thrillers, and it was a better deal. So that was exciting. And I wrote it, and then I liked it. So that's what I've been doing. I've just finished my 4th suspense book. It'll be out March 3rd next year. So we're just now doing covers and tagline. It's called Missing Sister. And we've been looking for a tagline forever. And my agent finally came up with it. It's really good. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Missing Sister, Revenge. It's all relative. It just kills me. It's pretty good. So it's a sister book and a missing person book. And there's opens with a murder, my favorite. So that's it was just like, I didn't know I was doing it. It just happened. And I'll tell you something weird. Like, now I've been living in upstate New York for a year. This is the first time I've been out of the South since I went to graduate school in Chicago. And it was when I was in Chicago, when I was out of the South, that I started writing Southern fiction. I've now been out of the South for a year this month, and I'm writing Southern fiction again. Does it have a body right at the beginning? Yeah, sure does. But I'm definitely back writing about the South. I found I did have something else to say after all.
Wow. And is your agent happy about this switch, or
Yeah, I mean, I said, this book I'm writing, I don't know what it is. And she's like, send me some of it. So I sent her the first 10,000 words, and she was like, yep, I don't know what this is, but this is the book you need to be writing. So, and she tells me, like, she is not my yes woman. She is not my cheerleading squad. She has literally said to me, this is not a good book. And I have said, well, how do I fix it? And she has said, you don't fix a bad book. Go write a good one. Like, this is not if she says, wow, then you believe it, because she was right. It wasn't a good book. I put it in the trash and I wrote it. It was not good. So, yeah, she's an editor. She started out as an editor, and she was my acquiring editor for my first novel. She was my editor for many books. And when she left, Warner, who was then Hachette, to become an agent, she's now my agent. Like, I love working with her. Just Karen Carmazzuti at DeFiore and Company, which is I like it's a nice, tight team. It's not a huge house. It's like a nice mid-sized house where you're not going to get lost. It's a really good house. I like the outfit. I like their ethics. I like their taste. I love my agent.
That's awesome, because that's your business partner. I mean, that's who's
100%
figure this stuff out.
Yes.
It's not a good book. Did that go in, a file to be fixed later, or did you just think, okay, I got that out of my...
I put it in the trash. What I took out of it was I took out there was a pair of sisters. One of them's husband, there were two sisters and they each had a husband and their marriages were radically different. And they had a past that in the book you hear about, but you never go there in the bad book. It's not relevant. There's just a couple of little flashbacks. And I just threw the whole thing out. It had been first person. It was third person. There was no element of plot that remained. There was no supporting cast that remained. I took the sisters, which is the two people I wanted to write about, and it was two marriages I kind of wanted to look at. And again, I'm always interested in women's relationships with the arts. One was a fabric artist and one worked in theater. And those things were all I kept, and I just started fresh, and I wrote a good book. So there you go.
I love that. How long does it take you typically to write a book?
It takes me 1.5 to 2 years to write a book. I wish I was faster. And I've kind of I just did a group writing project. I've always been the cat who walks alone, but I just I started doing collaborative projects with people and getting inside other people's processes. I think it's made me faster. This book is going so fast for me because I'm not going down any dead ends. And part of that is working in a couple of partnerships. I learned how to think ahead and write ahead in bullet points instead of having to write the whole thing and then go, I'm going down the wrong road, and correct before I write 30,000 words. I can do it in 3,000 words. So this book's going really fast. I might write this book in a year. What? Wow. Unheard of. Also, my youngest child has now fled the nest, so it may just be that I have more time.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, if it's process or space, as my gorgeous babies explode upon the world, I have some neat kids. They're weird. They're weird as hell, but they are so cool.
More gifts to the world. Do you mentioned collaborative projects? Are they co-writing projects or writing different parts, or what are the projects?
Yeah, it's not. I can't really talk about it yet right now. Yeah, let's just
another time. I'm just fascinated by that as well, because that's a different skill of who did what and how did it go. And we did again a webinar on co-writing 3 different pairs, and they all had completely different process.
I've written in 2 different pairs and a trio now in various capacities. And it's a trust fall in a lot of ways, but coming out of theater to be back where it's collaborative, where that was scary to me when I was young. Now it's really freeing, especially since everybody that I worked with is a pro and very good at what they do. So I know all their work. I've known them for years. So it's very easy to listen to them, to trust them, to be vulnerable with them and say, this might be a bad idea, but what if? And to see how that sparks them. It's really fun. I love it. I mean, I have my own little true north thing where I want to be writing my book too, but it's weird. I don't know, something about being in upstate New York, being out of my element. I seem to be having some sort of renaissance thing happening.
Interesting. Well, that's good for all of us.
Yeah.
So first of all, I love that you're a theater person, because that never leaves you. Whenever I used to talk to students, I taught artists arts administration, and I said it's like it's like malaria. You're never going to get over being a theater person.
No, you're
going to
not.
crop up. You're going to ignore it for years, and all of a sudden you're going to start singing a show tune. I mean, something's going to happen. So.
Yeah. And I married a theater guy. My husband, I met him, I was a teenager. I was 19. We were doing regional repertory theater in the summer between, in college. And the first time I ever saw him, he was on stage learning sword fighting. We were doing a summer of George Kaufman plays, and he was the fencing instructor. Reader, I married him. Like, how do you not marry that guy? He's a sword fighter. Woo! And he's like, and because, we're like, a really cool thing about being in upstate New York is we're 5 minutes from Amtrak. So we can get on the train, go into New York, do today tickets, find something, see a matinee of some of the best theater in the freaking world, and then be home, in time to put the dogs to bed.
Yeah. No, it's which is lovely. It's it's enviable. I do not have that, although I live near Boston, so it's not the best theater, but it's pretty good. So
Oh, I've never, the other thing about living up here is I don't know New England. So we're going to all these places I've been to like Boston on book tour 2 or 3 times, but I've never been, like, we went and saw the feminist, the Odyssey at Harvard when we went. You've got some good theater in Boston, really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And we went to the Isabella
Stewart Gardner Museum.
Yes, loved that place.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. No, it's
a great town.
It is a great town. It is a great town. But one of the ways you use your theater skills is, being a narrator of books.
Yes. Yes.
Again, a skill even actors who write don't always have the skill to do that. Talk to me about how you, especially doing other people's books, how do you approach that project?
As an actor, do I sound Southern to you?
A little bit, but not
a
as
little
much
bit.
as I've heard other folks.
I can, if I try, I can drop it and do like television flat Midwestern accent. If I have a beer, or God help us all, 2 beers, it's going to get real Alabama up in here is all I'm saying. So, I took classes to learn. I took voice acting classes when I started out as a theater major. That was one of the things I studied. So I have the training. And then when I was being a playwright, when I was trying to do playwriting and theater professionally, I made more money acting than playwriting, which is not saying very much. I made more money bartending than doing both those things put together. But if you got a voice acting job, that could be some bank. Like,
Yeah.
I did like some voiceover stuff for like PBS. Like I'm on an Emmy-winning documentary. So I had a background. Like, it was something like religion and revolution in Nicaragua, and you would see this nun talking Spanish, and every time it was that nun, I would come on and be like, "Here in Nicaragua, we believe," So, so I had a bunch of experience doing voice acting more than any other kind. And when my first book came out, I did not want to read it. We got a wonderful voice actor named Catherine Tabor. Not that anybody was beating down my door asking me to, but I'm just saying, like, I was like, how everybody thinks your first book is autobiographical?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my first book is autobiographical, and it's under my bed, and you will never read it. My first book was actually my third, which is pretty normal. So it was the third complete novel I'd ever written. It was the third novel I had shopped by an agent. And the main character is a wildly promiscuous murderess. So I thought, people are already going to think this is autobiography. Is that my mother's already just going to have the vapors reading this book? So but my second book, and also, like, I don't think I sound particularly young. And the narrator of that book, Arlene, the wildly promiscuous murderess, she needs to sound young, or you will not forgive her. She does stuff that if you do it when you're 16, 17 and are dealing with it when you're in your early mid 20s, if you did that crap when you're like 50, people would be like,
Yeah.
No, your frontal lobe has been finished for a long time. So she needed to sound really young. But the second book, I thought I could do a pretty good job. So I went to my editor, the woman who's now my agent, and said, "Hey, I want to read the audiobook. Can I do that?" And she was like, "Oh, honey, no. And I was like, "Oh, but I've done voice acting work, and that is so cute. No." And I said, "Okay, well, can I audition?" And she said, "Sure. Don't get your feelings hurt. They're not going to hire you, but I'll pass your tape along." So I went to a friend who was doing, he was a voice actor. He had a studio in his house. He did tons of music stuff and just voice acting work. and he mixed it for me. Like we did a professional audition tape, and I read like straight narration. I read a comedic scene, and then I read a scene where 4 male characters get in a fist fight, and there's 4 men who are all related having a huge argument and fighting each other with a female narrator, and sent that in. And then they called me and said, yes, you can read it. So, and my agent was like, wow, I didn't realize that you actually did voice acting. I was like, yeah. So, and then that book won awards, and it was like picked up by Cracker Barrel. You know, that they had a little program where they'd have about 30 audiobooks in the Cracker Barrel where you could check them out. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
so funny. And so it got a lot of play. Like I was up for the Audie Award, which is read by the author, which that is not a category that somebody likes. Like I was up for the Audie. It was me, Cokie Roberts, David Sedaris, Whoopi Goldberg, and Maya freaking Angelou. Which one of these things is not like the other? So it was like, I did a good job. So I started getting offers to do other authors too. And I enjoyed it. You know, it's a 3 to 5 day acting job where you read the book, you get really into the character. And like the way for me, I'm a body actor. I'm not a method person where I like try to think about my dead cat and cry or whatever. It's not my thing. I'm an outside in actor. You make the shape of it and then you will feel it. So like to keep a voice in my head, I know it's a podcast, so I can't show you, but I have what they call a rubber face, you know, which in a theater person, you know what that means. So I would have faces for characters where it's like, oh, whenever I need to be Paula, I just do this and there she is, you know, so you can get like a posture and so, you know, sitting in the chair, you just change the level of tension in your body, where your shoulders are, the expression on your face, and you just switch in and out of the voices because you feel it in your body. So once you have the voices set and you have it set with a posture, I'm a pretty clean reader. Like when I have to do pickups at the end, I don't have to do a lot of pickups because I read the book several times, you know, I prep for it. So.
You know, I was listening to an audiobook and I was thinking about this, and I'm grateful I can ask you this question because it's a weird one. Do you, when you got the book, how do you remember what Paula's voice is if she's not in there? You know, how do you remember what you did with each of those voices as the book goes on?
While I'm reading it?
Yeah, I mean,
because it's 4 days. I mean, it's 4 days in a row. You just pull this whole cast into your head. It's just like some things you don't care about. It's the waiter. They just say, here's your coffee, you know, or you don't care. Here's your coffee. And then they leave and you don't think about that character ever again. But every main character, it's great for an actor. You get cast as everyone. So you work on each of those characters and it's not like you have to think about it. You just be that character. It's very easy it's easy. If you're an actor, it's easy.
Yeah, if you're a trained actor. And
yeah. I mean, I often tell people like when people say, should I read my own audiobook? I'm like my editor. I'm like, no, don't do that. But some writers really should. I actually like, I like listening to Jenny Lawson. Do you know those books? The bloggess, she wrote, it has the mouse on the cover. She's got like 3 different memoirs. She's very funny. She reads her own books and she's just so listenable, chewable. David Sedaris, nobody else could read that. Like he's just perfect. And there are just people who, it's that thing where God touched my brain. It's a thing I'm able to do. And then I've put a lot of work into it. So you get that skill set. If you can do it, you can do it. Maybe not great, but you can do it. And then if you can do it, then you can get better just by working at it. So I work at it, you know, not as much anymore because I don't think I've read one book that wasn't mine since the pandemic because it was just not like, you know what I mean? Like I just didn't want to, it The pandemic shut everything down, and the voice studios were all shut down, and you can't go into a tiny room where somebody's been sitting for 4 hours, viral loading up there. You didn't know. So, yeah, I haven't really done it. And now I've moved up here, so I've lost my voice studio. I don't know if I'll do it again, but I loved it for as long. And also like, I feel like I could read for maybe the next year or two, the next half a decade. But once I'm into my 60s, my voice is I've already lost some range and some elasticity. That's just true. I'm not I can't do what I used to do. I'm still pretty good, but I'm not as good as I used to be. And that's just true. So at some point I'll just say, you know what, let somebody with stretchy young vocal cords take over my books. A thing that's very cool is my last thriller, With My Little Eye, about a stalker. My daughter's a theater major with, Scott and I both coming out of theater. She was genetically poisoned on both sides. I read the main character, and then most of my books are just one narrator, but this was one of the 2 or 3 that have multiple narrators, and they did a full cast audio where they cast every person. And so the main character was a mother, and she has a 14-year-old daughter, and my daughter, who's a very good actor, auditioned. I mean, they made her audition. It was like, do you think she's a really good actor? And it was the same thing. It was like, I know she's your daughter, but she auditioned and she was great. She was perfect. She was wonderful. And it was so special to do that. Do you know who else is a voice actor? Do you know Chris Bohalian or Bojalian? I don't know how to say it.
Yes.
I only read him. His daughter is a voice actor. She and I did the mother and daughter voices for a legal thriller by Jen Phillips, one of my favorite writers.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. It's a fascinating skill set. Actors blow me away. I've never been brave enough to be an actor. It's so much training and so hard to do. But I also love that you're talking about a way for actors to make a living being voice actors, because I know many stage actors, but that's how they supported their family, was doing PBS voiceovers and things.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say that's a way to do it, because I feel like that industry is going to be dead really soon. I mean, we're going to replace humans with AI. I don't want AI reading my audiobooks and writing the novels I read. I would like AI to do my dishes. Like, why are we making AI to do all the best parts of being human? Like, I don't want that. I don't want to look at paintings done by robots. I don't. I want to look at paintings done by human people. Well, I don't understand this. I mean, I guess it's because people who like to make money and who can reduce art to fungible widgets, where you just you plug in, here's the list of tropes I want you to cover, and I need a sex scene on, you can break it down to the nuts and bolts of, like, you can take apart the most successful novels and say, this far in, we need this kind of scene, and you can just churn out these things that hit all these notes that are just like the shadow of the novels that they're mimicking. Why are we doing that? Why aren't we making robots to, like, sweep? I don't want to sweep. I want to write a book.
Well, and I also think some of the attempt is to make it easier for people, because writing is hard, acting is hard. I mean, there's joy in the creation, but they're both hard. And I think that that's shortchanging the process to say, I'm going to make writing easier for you by giving you an AI tool. No, it's part of the joy is that it's hard.
Well, I mean, it's not just the joy, though, right? Like, if you think about writing an argumentative paper or a term paper, when you have to, like, one of the things that is true, any creative writer knows this, the journey from your brain to the page is fraught and perilous.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to get the beautiful, perfect thing you see in your head onto the page in a way that is clear enough for somebody to read it and access that. It's how you learn critical thinking, and it's a lot of how you learn empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And we really need critical thinkers and people with empathy right now. And AI, while everybody's brains are all spongy and able to learn stuff, to use AI as a tool to make it easier, it's just like, okay, well, I can use a hydraulic lift to lift these weights and it's much easier, but I'm not going to have any muscle tone. And in the same way, if you don't learn to read and to write, your brain's just going to be so smooth. You're not going to have all those good crinkles with the gray matter. Don't want a smooth brain, man. We need critical thinkers really badly. We need people with empathy really badly right now.
Yeah, we do indeed. All right. I could talk. This is fascinating. I don't want to keep you here all day. Let's just, as a writer, what's the worst piece of writing advice you either got or you've heard given that just stopped people? And what do you tell people you mentor? Like, what's the best piece of writing advice that you could give somebody?
Don't ever stop reading. I have so many, like everybody I know who's a working professional, if you ask them what they're reading, they get real excited and they're like, oh, it's this and blah, and there's this character and you have to read it. Or, oh, I'm halfway through this and I'm going to finish because I'm intrigued, but I hate it. And here's why. And I hear from people, like when I do events and stuff, and sometimes writers come and I'll say like, well, what are you reading now? And they'll say something like, oh, my free time is all for writing. I don't have time to read. I'm like, okay, writing is a conversation. Literature, the whole of literature is a huge conversation that's been going on for thousands of years. If you want to join that conversation, you need to listen. Like the person on the plane who really wants to tell you about herpetology is not a great conversationalist. Great conversationalists don't just talk. Great conversationalists also listen. And reading is listening for writers. So that I don't like any to hear, oh, I know I don't have much time. I have to write. Like, no. Every day at lunch, when I go to make my lunch, I sit down and I read. That's how I spend my lunch. I can't read at night. If I read at night, I can watch TV and fall asleep, but if I start reading, I don't fall asleep. I will read until the book is over, and then I'll lie there thinking about the book, unable to shut down. So I read in the daytime, but every day at lunch I read.
Yeah, that's fabulous advice and true. This has been a great conversation, Joshilyn. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Julie, for asking me. I'm so happy to meet you. I love Sisters in Crime. I know about it because do you know Wanda M. Morris? She ran the Sisters in Crime in Atlanta. She's a thriller writer. She's had 3 really good books come out. I love her work. And she was like, you need to come talk to Sisters in Crime. So I came in as a guest speaker in Atlanta and met people and ended up joining the organization. It was so cool.
Well, Wanda M. Morris is a fabulous writer and a fabulous human being, and I'm going to thank her next time I see her for getting you to join the organization, because I'm so glad that you're part of the community. It's just wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and it was really nice to meet you.
Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.